Daf Yomi Tractate Bava, page 19b, the top of the Amud, with the words V'ha'amar Rabbi Yochanan Ein Chatzi Nezek Chaluk Lo B'Reshus Yachid, etc. But doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say payment of half the cost of the damage is not differentiated between private and public domains, as there is no exemption from payment neither for damage on private property nor for damage in the public domain? What? Is this the principle not stated even in a case where the animal propelled pebbles in the public domain and caused damage in the public domain? Rabbi Zera said to him, no. Rabbi Yochanan stated this principle in a case where the animal propelled pebbles in the public domain and caused damage on the private property. Rabbi Yirmiyah said to him, but didn't you say, if there is no act of lifting here, is there an act of placing here? Rabbi Zera said to him, I retract my previous statement. Or, if you wish, say instead, when Rabbi Yochanan said that payment of half the cost of the damage is not differentiated between private and public domains, and there is no exemption from payment neither for damage on private property nor for damage in the public domain, he said it only with regard to damage in the category of goring, but not with regard to the case of propelled pebbles, for which one is exempt in the public domain. The Gemara relates that Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya and Rabbi Oshaya sat in the antechamber, the Akila of Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. A matter emerged from among them, and one of them raised a dilemma. If an animal swung its tail and thereby caused damage, what is the halacha? The other sage said to him, must the owner grasp its tail and walk to prevent the animal from causing damage? Since this is typical behavior for the animal, the owner should be exempt from the liability. I would think that if it's typical, you should not be exempt. You should be watching out for it. Anyway, the Gemara asks, if so, with regard to damage in the category of goring, too, let us say, may the owner grasp its horn and walk to prevent the animal from causing damage. Nevertheless, the halacha is that the owner is liable for damage in the category of goring. The Gemara rejects this. How can these cases be compared? Damage in the category of goring is not caused in the course of the typical behavior of the animal. Consequently, the owner is required to prevent his animal from causing damage in that matter. This damage caused by the swinging of an animal's tail is caused in the course of its typical behavior, and one cannot hold the owner responsible for an animal's normal behavior. The Gemara asks, and since that is its typical behavior, what is the dilemma that he raised? Obviously, one has no liability for the damage caused by the typical behavior of his animal in the public domain. The Gemara answers, he raised a dilemma with regard to a case of excessive tail swinging. Is excessive tail swinging considered typical behavior? Rav Eina raises a dilemma. If an animal swung its private part, its male member, it caused damage, what is the halacha? The Gemara elaborates, do we say that just as it is with regard to goring, is it not so in the case of goring that the animal's inclination overcame it and caused it to gore? Here too it is no different. The animal's inclination overcame it, and that is why it caused the damage. Or perhaps the cases are different. As in the case of damage in the category of goring, the objective of its action is to cause damage, where in this case, the objective of its action is not to cause damage. The Gemara concludes, the dilemma shall stand unresolved. So Mashiach has to come and tell us that if an animal... maybe it's symbolic of something. Alright. The Mishnah teaches chickens are deemed forewarned with regard to walking in their typical manner and breaking objects. If there was a string tied to a chicken's leg and it broke a vessel, or if the chicken was hopping in an atypical manner breaking vessels, its owner pays half the cost of damage. Rav Huna says they taught that one pays half the cost of the damage only in a case where the string was tied to the leg of the chicken on its own. In other words, A string became entangled on the leg of a chicken without the involvement of the owner, and an item was broken by the string. But if a person tied the string to the chicken, he is liable to pay the full cost of the damage, as the string is in the category of pit. The Gemara asks, if the string was tied on its own, who is liable to pay half the cost of the damage? If we say it is the owner of the string who pays, as the damage was caused by the string, what are the circumstances? If it is a case where the owner of the string concealed the string in a secure place and the chicken became entangled in it, the owner of the string is a victim of circumstances beyond his control and would be exempt from payment. And if he did not conceal it and instead left it exposed where it could become entangled in the feet of a passing chicken, he is negligent and liable as though he actually tied the string to the chicken. Rather, the case in the Mishnah is one where the owner of the string concealed it and is exempt from liability, and Rav Huna means that the owner of the chicken is liable. Here too the question arises, what is different in this case where one is not obligated to pay the full cost of the damage, as it is written in Exodus 21:33, if a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it, and an ox or a donkey fall therein, he pays the damage. And it is not written, if an ox shall open a pit. This indicates that if an ox opens a pit, the owner of the ox is exempt from liability. With regard to the payment of half the cost of the damage as well, the owner should be exempt from liability, as is written, if a man shall open a pit, and it is not written, if an ox shall open a pit. Rather, the case in the Mishnah is one where the chicken moved the string and thereby caused damage. Since the chicken did not cause damage with his body, the owner pays half the cost of the damage, as he does in a case of pebbles. And when Rav Huna's distinction between whether the string was tied on its own or by a person was stated, it was stated in a general sense, and not with regard to the halacha in the Mishnah. With regard to an ownerless string tied to the leg of a chicken, Rav Huna says, if the string was tied to the leg of the chicken on its own, the owner of the chicken is exempt, but if a person tied the string to the chicken, he is liable to pay the full cost of the damage. The Gemara asks, due to what primary category of damage is he liable? Rav Huna bar Manoah says, he is liable due to the fact that although the string is not stationary, as in the standard obstacle in the primary category of pit, this is an example of his pit that is rolled at the feet of a person and at the hooves of an animal, and that too is a subcategory of pit. Starting a new Mishnah, Ketzad Hashenu Edes. The Mishnah, within the context of the primary category of eating, for what damage caused with the tooth is an animal deemed forewarned? It is deemed forewarned with regard to eating food items fit for its consumption. The domesticated animal is deemed forewarned with regard to eating fruits and vegetables. If the animal ate garments or vessels, the owner pays half the cost of the damage, as these are not items fit for its consumption. If the animal is not deemed forewarned, in this case, in what case is this statement applied, that one pays the full value of the food eaten by the animal? It is in a case where the animal ate the food on the property of the injured party, but the animal ate food. If the animal ate food in the public domain, the owner of the animal is exempt from liability. And even if the animal ate food in the public domain, if the animal derives benefit from eating another's produce in the public domain, the owner pays for the benefit that it derives, just not for the full cost of the food. Under what circumstances does the owner of the animal pay for the benefit that it derives? If the animal ate produce in the public square, in the area before the storefronts, the owner of the animal pays the benefit that it derives. If the animal ate from food placed at the side of the public square, which is not a public thoroughfare, the owner of the animal pays for what it damaged, as the legal status of that area is like that of the property of the injured party. If the animal ate produce from the entrance of the store, its owner pays for the benefit that it derives, as the status of a store entrance is like that of a public domain. If the animal ate produce from inside the store, its owner pays for what it damaged. Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught eating is deemed forewarned in that an animal tends to eat that which is fit for it to eat. How is this applied? In the case of a domesticated animal that entered the courtyard of the injured party and it ate food fit for it to eat, or if it drank drinks fit for it to drink, the owner of the animal must pay for the full cost of the damage. And similarly, in the case of an undomesticated animal that entered the courtyard of the injured party and tore apart a domesticated animal and ate its meat, there the owner must pay the full cost of the damage. And in the case of a cow that ate barley, although this is not normally a food that a cow would eat, or in the case of a donkey that ate vetches, in other words, legumes, which are usually fed to cows, but not to donkeys, or in the case of a dog that licked oil, or a pig that ate meat, the owner of the animal must pay the full cost of the damage. Although these animals do not ordinarily consume these items, doing so is not a significant deviation from the animal's typical behavior. Rav Papa said, now that you said that eating anything that is not typical for an animal to eat, but eats it under duress, is considered an ordinary act of eating, it can be deduced that in the case of a cat that eats dates or a donkey that is eating fish, the owner must pay the full cost of the damage, despite the fact that these animals do not ordinarily eat these items. The Gemara relates that there was a certain donkey. Okay, you know what? We're going to hold this for the next one, reaching 13 minutes. Okay, we can stop here.